Hello guys, and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm gonna go over my psychic list, which recently won a local GLC tournament. I actually took quite a journey to get to this specific list, and I've tried out a lot of things, and I'll talk exactly why I chose this list in particular, and why I've fallen in love with it, and why I think it's a really solid list. Now, of course, this is a Dragapult variant of Psychic. Dragapult has a really cool ability which is called Infiltrator. If it is ever damaged by damage, you flip a coin, and if you get heads, you are immune from that damage. So it also, like, on the bench, if someone tries to snipe it with damage counters, it could potentially not get hit. Dragapult I found to really like because it forces your opponent to respect it, similar to like how Garchomp works in Dragon. Now it's not exactly the same. Dragapult you can hex and gust around, but it forces your opponent to really respect it, otherwise they potentially lose momentum based on a single coin flip or two, and I kind of really like that. The attack as well is something I found myself really enjoying. Phantom Force 120 damage is nothing crazy. In fact, I have Muscle Band in here to make that a 140, which hits a lot more things, but I really in particular like about Dragapult's attack is you are able to put 3 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like, which can easily, after 3 turns or 2 turns like a spell tag KO, you're able to take out a very important supporter that is just sitting on their bench, or clean up a couple of KOs, or set up some beautiful math for a future Dragapult KO or a future Blissey's turn. And that just feels really good, and that's kind of what I've been searching for in a psychic list. I'll take a little detour and let's look at all the other things I tried with Psychic that just didn't end up panning out for my personal playstyle. Now, of course, I started with a cheeky Gengar, Giratina, and Monkey Dory package. I really wanted to make this work because I thoroughly enjoyed the idea of just being able to pop in a Gengar, move all the damage off of it with Monkey Dory, and get some cheeky KOs that way. We have Giratina, which also pairs very well with Monkey Dory, as Shadow Impact does 130, and then you put 4 damage counters on one of your own Pokemon, but somehow I always just ended up missing math, and the combo could be easily countered, and a single Hex Maniac destroys your thing, but you didn't have to worry about like recovery as much since your attackers recovered themselves. And for a while I had Screamtail in there as well. Roaring Scream is crazy. If you're able to give yourself an HP buff, you can do 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each damage counter on Screamtail, so the damage numbers could get really high. I just never ended up using Screamtail, it never worked out, and then I decided to scrap that, and for a while I moved my package over to Monkey Dory Cofagrigus, which Law of the Underworld puts 6 damage counters on every Pokemon that has an ability, including your Monkey Dory. And it was very tricky to pilot sometimes, because occasionally you would have Monkey Dory, you would have Kirlia, maybe a Gallade, maybe a Wob on your bench, and you would try to get the Cofagrigus out, and yes, it could do a lot of damage to your opponent, but if your opponent doesn't have a ton of abilities on play, then you're hurting yourself more, and the Monkey Dory can save like one guy if you have like Monkey and Wob out, but you're actually going to end up killing yourself with the next attack. So I ended up scrapping the Monkey Dory and going for a less ability-based spread build, utilizing the new Uxie and the promo Azelf. Now, Uxie and Azelf are very similar but have slight differences. Uxie does Painful Memories and puts 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon, and Azelf does the same thing but only to Pokemon that are already damaged, and I even had a cheeky Old Cemetery in there to really hurt flood decks like Water, and I've really enjoyed this package. However, it's just the damage output was underwhelming, and smart players will play around, again, the Kafagrigus and Yuxi. And keep in mind, in all these iterations, I've had Blacephalon in it, as well as Blindside Natu to try to get some cheeky KOs, which this guy I did eventually cut, even though I like him quite a bit. Eventually, this morphed into me trying to find a good stage 2 to pair with this spread list to try to help finish up my opponent's board, because it struggled to do that a bit. Dusknoir was the first one I tried, but it's just very awkward, very targetable, and once the Dusknoir down or is hexed, you can't really do your game plan anymore, though it's like you can still spread, but Dusknoir just didn't pan out for what I was looking for in a deck. And we also tried Miss Magius for a bit, like the Dust Buddies. It wasn't like a full-on Dust Buddies list, it was like a half-hearted one, and it didn't really pan out, so that was quickly scrapped. I also played Lunala for a little bit. With the Lunar Pain ability and a counter energy, you can double all the damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon, which was really fun, and its second attack's actually really good as well. If you have the D-Value up, it pairs very well with that too. Psychic Touch does 130, which is a very good number, and 30 damage to one of my opponent's benched Pokemon. It does a very similar thing to Dragapult, except it pairs better with Dimension Valley and a spread type build. But then I decided, you know what, let's scrap just the spread build. It just got very convoluted in trying to make sure I was keeping pace, especially into very bulky decks, because this setup takes a while to get going and lets your opponent set up the board fairly quickly without really punishing them too bad. So you're spreading damage, yes, but you also need to be getting your board on, and you're attacking with small little guys that don't evolve into guys that do evolve, and you can evolve into bigger, beefier guys, and the damage just doesn't scale quite like you need it to. So that whole version got scrapped and we switched to Dragapult. Now I did run Dragapult with Xatu and Natu for a little bit, and even had Blindside in there, but I ended up scrapping both of them. Xatu just never saw play, and the Natu didn't use Blindside. In fact, I often used it more on Dragapult to get sneaky KOs on bench than with Natu, so I ended up scrapping that whole package as well, and landed on this list, which performed and got a 3-0 at my local GLC tournament. Of course, for Pokemon, we got Dragapult with the Infiltrate ability, and it has free retreat, which means you got another good pivoter. You got the 90 HP Dracloak, and the Dreepy that does 30 damage to KO potential little babies like Badoo or Elekid. And also, this is the secret sauce that I personally love a lot in my list, is Galarian Articuno with the Cruel Charge. When you play it from your hand and you have 2 other Psychic Energy, you can play it with those 2 Psychic Energy on it. And the Silencer attack, which forces you to sack all Psychic Energy, but you're able to do 120 damage snipe anywhere on your opponent's board, including active. And I have Oricorio with the Vital Dance. Oricorio, if you play it from hand, just acts like a Professor's Letter. You get to search your deck for any 2 basic energy and just put it into your hand. So that pairs super well together. And I also play the Clavel Supporter. Now what Clavel does is it puts basic Pokemon with 120 or HP or less into your hand, which means I can grab Wob, which I also play, Galarian Articuno, Oricorio, any of my setup guys that I need, and then all of a sudden I can have an Articuno setup. And I found myself also going for Oricorio just in case I needed a slightly bigger hand size, or I needed the energy to guarantee that I could get the energy attachment for turn. It felt very nice. I personally like Oricorio a lot better than the Xatu was doing on my list, because this guaranteed me energy, which my deck struggled to find sometimes. If we continue looking at my other Pokemon, we have the Boulder. This is, in my opinion, probably the best big basic attacker in Psychic. Adjusted Horn does 170 damage, but only if you and opponent have the same hand size. And with Gallade and just a good chunk of regular consistency cards, that is actually a fairly easy thing to hit throughout the game. Blacephalon is still one of my favorite cards in this list. A lot of people forget about the 3 prize Blacephalon turn, and if you just hold it in deck or in hand until that 3 prize turn, suddenly a single Raihan or a teammates with a Malamar on bench or Devalue in play, suddenly you just have a Blacephalon and you can wipe out at least 2 of their guys or 1 being up threat, and it feels so good taking KOs on Blacephalon turns and really ruining their boards, and Dragapult can really help set up the math for that to work. Wobbuffet is just your regular old guy, then Bite Barricade shuts off each player's abilities except Psychic Pokemon, so this is the way you set up your board. Psychic Assault is actually super clutch, especially into the New Whale. New Whale has 240 HP, but after a single hit from something like a Galarian Articuno or a Dragapult or a Boulder, you can go into Wobbuffet with 2 energy or 1 energy and a Dimension Valley, kill their whale, and shut off all of their abilities. That's, in my opinion, Psychic's best answer to Whale. You're 2-shotting it anyways, and if you can 2-shot it and shut off their abilities with your second attacker, that just seems incredibly good. And of course, it's wonderful to give you time to set up your board. We, of course, play Gallade as our support line. Both Kirlia and Gallade are really, really good, and I have a 70 HP Ralts because I was practicing my Psychic list for the longest time into Raging Bolt, and I was tired of my Ralts dying. Kirlia is the classic trade. You sack a card from hand and you draw 2, which can help you set up or get the right hand size for Boulder. And Gallade as well, Buddy Catch. Once during your turn, you can search your deck for any supporter, allows you to play things like Hex and Tulip and Lucamine, and just get whatever you need for that turn to succeed. Malamar is my other support evolution line, and Psychic Recharge just makes sure that the energy in my discard pile comes back. Galarian Articuno sacks energy from it. Kirlia, you can discard Psychic energies with it early if you know you can get the Malamar out later and it doesn't feel as bad. It just is very nice synergy. And then here is my 30 HP Pokemon of choice. People kind of do Smoochum or Cleffa. I feel like Cleffa's a lot stronger, especially with my favorite card, this is one of my other favorite little tricks in this list is Spell Tag. Now, Spell Tag is a tool card that only works on Psychic Pokemon, but when it is knocked out, wherever on your board, if they don't do a snipe it with a Raging Bolt or with a spread deck, whenever it gets knocked out, I get to put 4 damage counters on my opponent's Pokemon in whatever way I want, which can easily set up for like a Phantom Force KO on the active and the bench, or just fix the mask for Dragapult or one of my other guys. Slapping this thing on a Cleffa forces your opponent to respect it with a Field Blower, which burns a resource, which means you can get a D-Valley and up more permanently, or a Muscle Band or a Floatstone a lot easier into play. Or maybe they have their own little guy in play and they take your Cleffa, but you get to take their Elekid instead. This feels so good. I'm never going to cut this card from my list just because it's such a cheeky little card that forces a lot of respect. And with Arven and Goosehala, you have to get a tool card anyways, and this is a really good neutral type of card to have in your list. Now, my last Pokemon I do have is Mew. This is the addition I made to help me win this last match, since there was a lot of spread going on and one of the better players was repping Electric Spread, so I put in Mew with Bench Barrier, especially since Psy Power also really goes well with my game plan and can really help with checkmate scenarios, setting up damage with something like Articuno or Dragapult, or that Spell Tag. Now, let's go to our supporters. Supporters are super stock standard. Let me just grab them really fast. Clavel is probably the most non-standard part of it, but actually really helps since Psychic can struggle setting up his board. Draw supporters Iono and Marnie, Cynthia, Research, Tate, and Liza. There are 2 free retreaters in this list, as well as Floatstone and Mystery Energy, but occasionally you do feel the stretch, especially if you have to use Mystery Energy on your Galarian Articuno, which has to sack the energy when it's attacked. So having the switch option still feels very nice. Part of me really wants to put Escape Rope into this list, but I haven't found the room for it, because sometimes it just gets really awkward with Galarian Articuno stuck in the active, so this list could probably potentially use a little bit more switch, or maybe just an air balloon in here as well. Arvin and Guzma and Hala just help me get the specific search setup I need. Run 3 tools and 3 special energy and 2 stadiums, so Guzma and Hala is really nice, especially since one of those stadiums is Dimension Valley. For comeback cards, we play both Teammates and Raihan. Teammates guarantee you any 2 cards you need, and Raihan can help you when you're down an energy attachment or don't have Malamar. Lusamine, of course, gets you a combination of any 2 supporters or stadiums from your discard pile back into your hand, which means it can be a Dimension Valley plus an additional Hex or Guzma if needs be. Tulip is just Nessa for Psychic. Get up to any combination of Psychic and basic Psychic Energy cards back into my hand. And for tech cards, we got Guzma, Gust Kill, and Hex Maniac. With Gallade, having Hex Maniac whenever you want it feels very, very good. And that's pretty stock standard. The only thing that's kind of special is the Clavel, but that's for a very specific combo that is really fun to pull off and works really well in helping set up the Psychic list, which can struggle with that in the early game. Now we are on to our items. Items are fairly stock standard as well. Fog Crystal, Basic and Psychic Energy, Buddy Buddy Poppin', Quick Ball, Hisuian Heavy, Ultra Ball, Level Ball, Mystery Energy, Evo Soda, Evo Incense, Rare Candy. These are all the Pokemon related things, and Rare Candy helps both your Dragapult come on a little faster or come back out late game very fast after a Tulip or a Rescue Stretcher, or it helps you get your Gallade out really fast. Rare Candy is just really good in this list because the stage shoes are just that good. Rescue Stretcher for additional recovery. Town map so you can see where your prizes are, especially with Dimension Valley being so crucial. Having the Hisuian Heavy Ball helps you get the basics if that's all you know you need. And if you have a spare item card, Town Map is just another burnable card that can help. And having good chunk of burnable cards is really important, especially in an Iron Boulder list, because sometimes you just need to match really small hands. Trainer's Mail and Pokegear 3.0 are our consistency, helping us find cards we need it. Papad is insanely good. With Gallade, acts as a second VS Seeker, but also recycles an additional card. Field Blower gets rid of, nasty things like a pivot or an important stadium. VS Seeker's just that good. And for tools, we run Muscle Band, which helps fix math. It makes Boulder hit 190, which KOs Torterra, and helps Dragapult hit 140, which is just a really, really good number. And Floatstone to help my chonky guys retreat. Boulder has 3 retreat, that's really chonky. And of course we have Spell Tag, which I explained earlier. Artisan, which board needs to set up. Dimension Valley, which is just, you need that in your Psychic list. And for energy, 5 basic energy and 3 special: Horror, Psychic, Mystery, and Counter. And Counter energy I really like. It means you can charge up your Articuno in 1 turn. If you have Dimension Valley, it means you can charge up your Boulder in 1 turn. The counter energy is just a little extra sauce to keep things going. And that is the Psychic list. Be sure to let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys all in next week's video. Bye!